Love under the scope.
Welcome back to Love Under the Scope. This is a show where we are going to explore all of the ups and downs that come with being in a long-term relationship with another human being. I like to explore the topics that you don't see talked about in a lot of shows, especially not on social media where everything is perfect all the time. We're going to get into some topics that are taboo and difficult to face sometimes. The fact is, when we do face them and we have the courage to talk about these things, then we can actually create a stronger relationship where we feel like a team. Even the strongest, greatest, most loving couples go through challenges and go through troubling, scary, turbulent times. There's no couple out there that hasn't faced obstacles and had to overcome them. That's what makes us stronger, not only as individuals, but as a couple, is to move through these things if we choose to do so. It certainly is a choice to face these things. A lot of people choose not to, subconsciously or consciously. And so I, on this show, want to get into some of these nitty-gritty topics that I have dealt with in my own relationship, most of them. And when I have, I've felt quite alone. Like nobody out of my friend group or family was talking about these things and how they are normal. They happen. And there was nothing wrong with me at any point during these times. Or when I still do experience these things, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my partner. We're not meant to break up. We are not suited for love. We are a wonderful couple. I love my partner, and actually he is a large part of why I chose to go into this work, because we made a unspoken pact with each other that we would move through these things as hard as it got. And trust me, it's gotten difficult at times, but I have no regrets. I am so happy for where we are today. And so I want to share some of the knowledge that I have gathered by going through these things. That's exactly what this show is about. I am your host, Kelby Lauren. I am a self-love and relationship coach. I work with individuals, I work with couples to move through exactly the things that we talk about in this show and more. The topic for today's episode is how to give and receive comfort and soothing when emotions are running high. Now, in my last episode, I talked about triggers. That would be a really good place to start if you want to go back and listen. I talked about sort of a breakdown of moment to moment, what does trigger look like? How does it unfold? Why do we feel triggered? Where do triggers stem from? How we can work through triggers in our own self, kind of a solo experience of working through trigger. In this episode, we're going to cover what does it look like to comfort each other when we are triggered, or especially emotional, if we're grieving, if we're angry, if we're sad, if we're really frustrated. How can we offer comfort to our partner? It can be really difficult to know what to do, what to say. A lot of people feel pressured to say the exact right thing, to do the perfect thing for their partner. I know I've felt that way. Like I was at a loss for words, and I wanted to almost be able to read my partner's mind so that I could know exactly what he needed to hear, especially if we weren't comforted as children, if we didn't feel soothed by our parents when we were under stress, when we were emotional. That would add an extra layer of not knowing how to give comfort. Not only to give comfort, but to receive it. That's another big part of today's episode, is how we can receive comfort, request to receive comfort, but not only make the request, but also how can you then receive it? It sounds pretty simple, right? Your partner comes and gives you a hug. You receive the hug, but it goes a lot deeper than that. When somebody tries to hug you, are you the type of person that you shrink down? You feel weird or icky and you don't know how to respond. If that's you, you might not know how to emotionally, spiritually, energetically receive a hug. A hug isn't just taking your two big arms and flopping them around somebody or letting them embrace you. It's so much more than that. There's a feeling element. That's why I want to talk not only about how to give, but also to receive comfort when emotions and tension is running high. Another reason why it could be difficult to know what to do, either as the giver or the receiver of comfort, is because emotions, when we're in the middle of them, things can get messy. Sometimes we get lost in the emotion. Whether we're the one feeling it or if our partner is feeling it, we can get wrapped up in that emotion with them and almost feel responsible for it. And so we end up in this vortex of pure emotion, not knowing what is needed, what needs to come next in order for us to move through this. And I'm going to speak on the times where you are maybe the perceived cause, quote unquote, cause of the emotions in your partner, and when you're not. It's funny because even when our partner is upset and it's not with us, sometimes we can still feel triggered. So for example, if your partner is angry with the neighbor and stomping around and raising their voice, even though they're not mad at you, I'm sure you have felt this before where you still feel stressed. You still might even feel like it is targeted at you. Even though they are not actually angry with you, we may take on the anger. The point being that in these emotional times, things get difficult, things get messy. And when things get messy, they can turn for the worst real quick. That's why I want to go through some strategies with you. Before I begin, I want to highlight that these things that I'm about to mention, these strategies, are learned skills. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes patience, and some element of self-compassion and compassion for our partner comes in as well. These are not things that you learn overnight just because you listened to this show or you talked about it for a little bit with your partner. These are things that take time. We're talking about emotion here. Emotions can be quite strong, and so working with them will always take time. One more note before we jump in is that I'm going to take a general perspective when it comes to emotions, meaning I'm not going to zero in on anger. I might use anger or sadness or grief as examples, but when I speak to emotion, I'm taking a very general approach. Now, emotions are obviously different from person to person. They have different flavors, they are expressed differently in each individual, but for the purposes of keeping this episode on the more brief side, we'll take a general approach. Now, I do believe even though emotions are going to be quite different and the way we deal with them might even be different, there is still this common denominator of peeling back the layers and looking at what's underneath each emotion. We can do that whether we're dealing with anger, sadness, grief. We can peel back the lid, per se, and see what's going on underneath, which is going to be the general theme for all of my episodes. It's always about going deeper and seeing the truth of what's really going on. We're going to begin with how to offer comfort to your partner when they are feeling emotional. Now, I use the word offer. I think that's a really key word here because it is something that we offer. We don't force comfort onto somebody. We don't make them feel comforted. We offer our best attempt at comfort. Whether that is received or not depends on the person, depends on how emotional they are, how triggered they are, but it is something that we offer. Hopefully something that we can do in a loving and compassionate way. I also want to mention, I have a few notes here before we get into the real juicy stuff. Okay, when I talk about emotions and expression of emotions, I'm also assuming that you are safe. So I'm assuming that your partner is not abusing you. I'm assuming that your partner is not abusing themselves. I am assuming a general layer of you're both safe. You're both not in danger of being hurt or abused. So please do take that into consideration, because that element of being afraid of your partner hurting you or hurting themselves, that's not what I'm talking about here. And I would say that for all of my episodes. I'm talking about a generally emotionally stable couple where emotions will still come up. We're human, emotions happen. Sometimes they get the best of us and that we get carried away, but we're not hurting each other. We're not in danger of hurting ourselves. I want to make that very clear. With that being said, let's get into it. So, comforting your partner. They have just experienced something, a trigger most likely, or maybe they're feeling an ongoing sense of sadness or grief. They have experienced something and it has tipped off an emotion. My very first question for you would be, is it okay to allow them to feel this emotion? To feel angry, to feel frustrated, to feel sad, grief, etc. You may have heard this concept that a lot of the time men will want to fix things. I would say that it's not just men who are fixers. I know that I myself, because I generally just want things to be okay all the time, I can have a tendency to want to fix. And when we're talking about the onset of an emotion, we generally don't want to come in with this fixing mentality, especially right away. When the emotion is at its height, can we allow our partner to simply feel it? When we get into fixing, when we get into even like shaming our partner, making it not okay for them to feel, we're maybe leading or causing them to further suppress the emotion. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that in our partner. We don't want to do that in ourselves. Emotions are there for a reason. And if we suppress them, or if our partner suppresses them, they aren't going away. They will become a festering, hankering entity within you until they are addressed. And a big part of addressing an emotion, especially one that's tied to a belief system, which most of them are, is allowing the emotion to be felt. When I say allowing, I'm using that word on purpose. So we're allowing the flow of an emotion. Think of the way a sea turtle enters a current and then allows that current to take it on a journey. That's kind of what an emotion is like. So can you allow yourself or your partner to be taken on that current within reason? You know, I said earlier that hopefully you're not in danger, they're not throwing things or anything like that. But within reason, can you allow your partner to be taken on that current and to express what they feel? There is some nuance to this, because if your partner is the type to start to take out their anger on you, we don't want that. If you are the type to take responsibility and to take on your partner's emotion, obviously, I would say that's something that you probably should work on. Nobody's emotions are your responsibility to fix, to take on as your own, to feel like you have to handle them. And so that can add some complexity to this first step where we are simply allowing the emotion to be there. Why would we want to allow? Just like I said, when we allow the emotion to flow, we're letting ourselves go through that current, to go through the wave, and then end up on the other side. Also, emotions all have their own purpose. Anger has a purpose. It's for us to be in our power and to feel like we have power. We can stand in it. Grief has a purpose. It gives us the space and the pause to release what we're feeling. Frustration has a purpose. It might be showing us that something is off, something isn't right, something needs to be addressed. These are just examples, by the way. You could go on and on. There's so many emotions. My point is, every emotion has a reason that it is there. So if we go in with a fixing mentality, or we're trying to cut it off, shame it, all we're doing is making it so that we're going to have to deal with that emotion later, and it probably will have gotten worse. I think there is room for experimentation here as well. If your partner is feeling especially angry and effusive, does it mean that you need to sit there and be in the presence of their anger and expose yourself to that energy? Not necessarily. What if, for example, you told them, I'm going to walk away and you can feel your anger, you are entitled to that anger, and when you feel like you have expressed all of it and you feel a little more back to neutral, then I am here to support you. I think the more that we work with emotion, the more that we are okay with being in the presence of somebody who is triggered. But that doesn't mean that you need to force yourself to sit there through it all. And in fact, your partner might even want you to leave the room. If they need a good cry, if they want to punch a pillow or scream into a pillow, maybe they want you to go and take a walk for a minute so they can do what they need to do in order to feel somewhat back to normal. There's room in here as well to ask your partner, what can I do to support you to move through this emotional state? If they are especially sad, can you ask them, what can I do to support you? And they may request that you hold them. They may request that you draw them a bath. If they're angry, like I said, they may request that you leave the room or that you just be there and listen. Listening is a tough one sometimes when emotions are high, because again, we can go into the story of, this is my fault. I have to take care of this. They're angry at me. It's all my fault. I think asking that question might come a little bit after they've expressed some of their anger or sadness. And certainly there's an element of the tone that you're using. I do feel it could come across to certain people as condescending. If they're really feeling triggered and you're like, what can I do to support you? I could imagine myself being like, fuck off. It's tough sometimes when we're at the height of that emotion. That's why I'm saying, what can you do to just allow them to move through that first 10 minutes, 20 minutes of just pure emotion? That's the time where we say shit that we don't mean. We can be especially cruel. We can be especially dramatic. We say things like, I just don't want to live anymore. And so we may want to give our partner the time to really be in that emotion, which is so intense sometimes. But yeah, there eventually is that time for the question of, what can I do to support you through moving through this emotion? And then once they feel supported, or you have offered that, and they have moved through that initial intensity of emotion, there's another question. And this is a question that I would ask you to use your intuition on when you're going to inquire. I think it is an important question. It is, would you be willing to talk about what's really going on or what you really feel? And you could take this even further. What would be needed for you to be willing to talk about what's going on, what's really going on? Some examples of that would be time alone, a walk in the park, a nice bath, telling me that you really love me and you are here to support me no matter what. So what do they need in order to come to a place that can be quite vulnerable, where we're going to talk about what's really going on. I mentioned earlier, all of these emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, worry, grief, whatever it is, we can always peel back the lid and look one layer deeper. This is interesting with emotions, in my opinion. We may strongly believe that other people cause our emotions and that other people are the perpetrators and we are the victim. And I won't argue with you and sometimes with myself when we especially feel that way. There's no reason to force yourself to come out of that belief. In fact, I think feeling like a victim is a part of the process of going through our belief systems and letting them go. So I don't mean to delegitimize any feelings of victimhood. And if we are ready to move through our emotions, especially those that come up over and over and over again, there is an element of having to go in and see what's really going on. Now, I'm not going to lie. If you're going to ask your partner this, I would say they probably will have had to do some kind of self-reflection before they can make sense of this question. If you ask somebody who has never looked inside for the root cause of their issues this question, they're going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? What's really going on is my neighbor won't turn his music off and he's a fucking asshole. Any of you who have done internal work and self-reflection, you will know that all of our perceived problems can be traced back to an internal belief system. That doesn't mean we're not allowed to have boundaries. That doesn't mean we're not allowed to put our foot down and not put up with bullshit. What it means is that in order for us to get through the frustration of that pattern happening and over again, is we're going to have to look inside and take a deeper look at what's really going on. Like I said, when we ask our partner this question, there's a level of vulnerability required in order to answer it. If we're going to search within ourselves for the real root of the emotion that we're feeling, first of all, that requires a level of skill to be able to look and find the source, okay? And to be able to do that with truth and stripping away at the blaming that is usually the default for a lot of people. So that's the first note here would be, it's a skill to be able to go in and do this. The vulnerability that it requires to do this, I think it's important to stress that you, as the asker of the question, are you prepared to be with your partner in that level of vulnerability? Maybe you haven't seen your partner in that mode. Maybe you haven't seen them open up to you that way. Going back to the annoying neighbor issue, let's say your partner was annoyed about that and angry. And my God, he just always is playing that music and I can't sleep at night and it's always waking me up and he's really pissed off. So you've allowed him to be angry. You've allowed him to feel the feelings. You have maybe offered him some support. Maybe he just wanted to be heard and you let him go through the motions of that. And then we come to the question of, are you willing to talk about what's really going on here? Now, assuming that your partner has done some internal exploration, he is able to realize that the reason I get so angry when our neighbor plays his music really loud is because I feel powerless. I feel small. I feel like my peace is being intruded upon. That's just one layer within this cake, we'll call it. Our emotions have a lot of layers and different belief systems that will be stored in there. Another part of that could be growing up, my dad was always in my face yelling at me, and he never let me be in peace. And now when my neighbor is playing this music at night and all throughout the day, it reminds me of the loudness of my father's voice and him being in my face. Another element of that could be, it reminds me of how critical I am of myself. I feel powerless to my own thoughts of criticism against myself. So we could go on and on with examples here, but can you see how this would be quite vulnerable to open up about not only our past, but our beliefs about ourselves? And especially for a man, admitting that he feels powerless, that is quite vulnerable. And so when we ask this question, we do have to make sure that we are ready to hear the truth. Can you hold that with your partner while they share? If you're able to make it from the first step of allowing the expression of the emotion all the way to this point, you have done a damn good job. And you have offered a lot of soothing and comfort. It's very restorative to a person in a couple to be able to express the things that I just went through. This isn't the only way to move through emotional periods, and certainly add in your own flavor throughout this whole process. You know yourself and your partner much better than I ever could. This is just my experience. Now, I want to end this side of the equation, offering comfort to our partner, with one last statement. This is kind of like the cherry on top of the entire process. And that is there anything I can do to support you with what you just shared? Like I said, whatever they shared might have been quite vulnerable. And so to then offer support around that vulnerability might feel like we have an open wound. So you're almost saying, can I offer you a Band-Aid? Can I offer you some Neosporin? What can I do for this open wound that would help it to heal? What you offer could be behavioral. It could be something you do in communication. It could be something emotional. An example of that could be, every day when I get home from work, I feel really stressed because I've had all of these demands coming at me all day, people needing things, expectations all day. So when I get home, I wonder if you would be willing to first meet me at the door with a smile and a hug. And then for the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I would request if you would be willing to not ask me any questions, to just tell me that you missed me and that you've been looking forward to seeing me. You don't have to be that specific, but it could also help if you were specific, to demonstrate to your partner what it looks like for you to be supported. We're not mind readers. I can feel that when I hug you, you enjoy it. I don't really know, is this doing anything for you? Or is this exactly what you needed in this moment? So going back to the beginning of the episode, we feel like we have to know exactly what our partner needs from us all the time, and that we have to read their mind. And that's just not true. Everybody's different. Some people don't want to be hugged. Some people, when they get home from work, maybe they want you to just let them go sit on the couch for 10 minutes and not even interact with them at first. Is that okay? I think so. So my point is just, we do need to have these dialogues of what is supportive to you when you're in the highest stress point of your day, whatever that is. What would be supportive to you that I can do? Now we're going to move into receiving comfort from your partner when you are the one who is emotional. A lot of this is going to mirror what I just said. The difference is you are the one listening to this podcast, so you may have to be the one to tip off each step, or to experiment with this process on your own and invite your partner in and see what happens. That can add another layer of complexity because you are the one in this case who is the emotional one. So I want to emphasize again, take your time and be patient with yourself. These are things that they're skills, like I said earlier, they take time to develop. The first step here is just like the first step from when you're giving comfort. When you're going to receive comfort, can you allow yourself to first feel the feelings without shame? Instead of shame, can you start to replace that with curiosity? I'm feeling frustrated and irritated, especially if you're somebody who turns to substances or some other destructive activity when you're feeling that way. Before you go to that thing, can you first go, interesting, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling numb. I'm feeling uneasy. We don't create emotions out of the blue for no reason. And you'd be amazed if you sit with your emotions and give it time to develop. We can a lot of the times trace them back to something quite specific, if not to pinpoint exactly when the emotion started. We can at least go in and sit and say, what am I feeling? Yeah, I'm feeling uneasy. And when I sit with the uneasiness, I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. We don't necessarily have to pinpoint it to, oh yeah, at 2:32, this thing happened and it annoyed me. Although sometimes maybe you can do that. Point being, we are not crazy. We don't create frustration, anger, sadness, worry, grief out of the blue because it's fun and enjoyable. We feel these things because of a belief system or an event or something from the past triggering us now in the present. I want to go back to the sea turtle riding the current. The current is not always pleasant. Current that the sea turtles ride is sometimes choppy, sometimes quick, sometimes it's slow, and the sea turtle just rides through it. That's what I am demonstrating now with this emotional state. Can you ride through the current and know that it's temporary? No emotion is permanent. Think of a time that you felt really sad. Are you still really sad? Maybe you are right now in this moment, but sadness is not a perpetual feeling. Neither is excitement, neither is joy, neither is frustration, anger. These are things that happen, they come up in waves. That can be helpful to understand when we're allowing the flow of an emotion. If I allow this emotion to flow now, then I'm much more likely to be able to come off of it and less likely to shove it down, only to have it come up again in an even more amplified way in the future. I want to emphasize here the idea of allowing the flow of an emotion versus exacerbating it. I'm not asking that you amplify it. If you're angry and you're at like a level 6, I'm not saying, well, let's bring it up to a level 9, and just start throwing shit and screaming. If you're at a level 9, that's where you're at. But I'm certainly not saying that it's a good idea to get yourself more and more angry. What I'm saying is to allow the flow of what is there right now. And if that's a little bit of anger, it's a little. And that's okay. If it's a lot, it's a lot. Just as before, I would say that you can do this in private. You can pull yourself away from your partner and do this in privacy. Or if your partner can handle it, if they're a particularly emotionally strong person, then it's actually kind of cool to be witnessed in your anger in a way that is not destructive and attacking. Your partner isn't a punching bag for your emotions. I certainly don't want to give that idea. I think that's actually quite unfortunate when that becomes a dynamic that develops. But if your partner can kind of sit there and go, yeah, she's pissed, that's great. I'm happy for you, because it's really great to be able to express your emotions in a healthy and constructive way, and then to have your partner there to support you. And to, sometimes when I'm angry, my partner goes, yeah, that's fucking messed up. Yeah, that ain't right. Or sometimes he'll even say, like, I think you're triggered right now. Yeah, it's not always easy to hear. My point is your partner in a place emotionally where they can handle being present with you while you feel your feelings? I do hope that for you. I don't think, especially if we're grieving or we're sad, I don't love the idea that we have to do that in private all the time. Me personally, I am not the kind of person that wants to cry privately all the time. Yeah, I want to cry privately sometimes. It feels good to be on my own and to just no filter, let the tears fall. But I also want to know that my partner can come in and hold me through it. And that's something that's important to me. So this is a very personal preference and something that you will have to feel into on your own if you're wanting to explore the topic for today. Just like I said before, you can also request something from your partner in order to feel supported through the expression of your emotion. So there's not really a whole lot to expand on. In this case, it's just the reversal of what I said earlier. What do you want to request from your partner if they're willing to give it to you? That's important. That you do want a willing partner. You don't want to necessarily force your partner to do something that they're not wanting to do. But how would they be willing to support you in order to express and come to a point of being able to share what is really going on? Now, assuming that you have gone through the process of feeling your feelings, expressing your feelings in whatever way feels good, whether your partner is around or not, maybe they've listened, maybe they have held space, as the spiritual community loves to say. I do think it's a good term, holding space, because it's implying that your partner is able to hold their own and not take on your shit as you express and as you go through the emotions that you are entitled to having as a human being in a human experience. So you've made it through the expression of your emotions, and now you are ready to share what is really going on. Now, this step of the process is really helpful for receiving comfort because, like I said, when we're angry or sad and we're expressing that, there is a tendency for our partner to take that on and to maybe take responsibility, even if we're not pointing the finger at them. If we are pointing the finger at them, then absolutely they are probably going to take responsibility. But even if we're not, that can happen. So this part of the process is really cool because it does take some of the blame off of them. When we're talking about what's really going on, we're tracing back to ourselves. What is going on at a deeper level within me around this issue, this trigger that I can trace all of this back to? So another example could be, I'm really frustrated because I'm a tattoo artist and one of my clients didn't show up to an appointment today, didn't call me, didn't say anything. Yeah, that's pretty shitty behavior. And there is still another layer where can I go in and see? This especially triggered me because I am just getting started out with my tattoo business, and I don't really feel confident that my work has value, that people want the tattoos that I do, that people think I am skilled. Okay, so there's an insecurity within me that made it so that when this client didn't show up, it pissed me off. It triggered me even more so than it would if I didn't have that insecurity. So I hope that gives you some more clarity about how there's always a deeper level. I do like the analogy of taking the lid off. There's another analogy of getting into an elevator and taking it one story lower. The issue is on the ground floor. That's the trigger. Can we take the elevator one level down, a little further into the subconscious mind, to see what is going on within me that is exacerbating this trigger, that is causing me to go into this very emotional state? I will share here that the majority of the work I do with my clients is about taking responsibility for our own shit and not taking responsibility for what's not ours, for what is our partner's. Being able to delineate that, to take that responsibility, it takes courage, first of all. And it also offers us a little bit of clarity. It offers us the ability to work on stuff because we're not in the confusion so much, the mess that can happen when we don't know what's ours, when we're flinging our shit at our partner, when we're projecting, in other words, our past onto our partner. Being able to take responsibility and to have that courage to face, this is my shit. This is what I do inside of myself. This is the story that I tell myself when my partner does this, when my neighbor does this, when my coworker does that. It's my shit, and I'm taking responsibility for it. That's a big part of this step in the process of what is really going on for me. Another part of what's cool about this step in the process is when you share from a deeper level what is really going on for you. Guess what? Your partner can comfort you in a more intuitive and a more genuine way. Think about it. What makes you want to be more compassionate? If I told you you're such an asshole, you never keep your promises to take me out to dinner, or when you say you're going to take me to dinner, and then the plans fall through, it feels like you don't care for me. And the story I tell myself is you don't love me and you're going to leave me. Okay. And the second version of that, I told you what I really feel. And hopefully that would compel you to come to a more compassionate understanding because I'm not blaming you. Yes, I'm saying a fact. You did say we were going to go to dinner and then you did cancel on me because you had to work late. That was a fact. What I didn't do is call you an asshole. What I didn't do is call you flaky. I simply stated the facts and then I told you how it makes me feel and the story that I tell myself. Now that opens the door for you to step in and comfort me and hopefully make some changes as well. I have brought up this book in past episodes and I'm going to do so again. This is a great book for communicating what you really feel. So it is Nonviolent Communication. It's by Marshall Rosenberg. And this is a really good roadmap for compassionately sharing your feelings with your partner and anybody else. Very much recommend this book for this particular step in the process. We're basically going from you are causing my problems and my pain to I am suffering because of the story that I'm telling myself. See the switch in responsibility there. Doesn't mean that we can't have boundaries. Doesn't mean that we can't request different behavior from our partner, but we are not projecting. We are not blaming, pointing fingers, etc. That kind of approach always is more effective. There's never a time where blaming, pointing fingers, calling names, projecting is effective at bringing us through the emotional process in a way that helps us to reconnect and come back to a place of love. Once again, there's the cherry on top to this process where you have shared vulnerably what is really going on, and now you can make a request from your partner. Would you be willing to hold me? Would you be willing to tell me what you love about me? Would you be willing to go for a walk with me? Whatever would feel good for you after being in this vulnerable state that took a lot of courage and bravery to get to. That is my experience of the best way we can give and receive comfort to and from our partner during particularly emotional and tense periods of time. I do think you could apply these steps to times where you're not particularly emotional. Maybe you've just felt a little sad recently and you want to use this same process to look a little deeper into what's going on. Please do. In fact, maybe using these steps during times where emotions aren't super high would be helpful to slide your way into being able to use these same skills for more explosive and obvious times of emotional distress. Either way, I want to thank you so much for listening to Love Under the Scope today. It was a pleasure to cover this topic. It's a really interesting one for me. We are human beings. We don't deserve to feel shame and brokenness about our emotions and something that makes us unique and really beautiful. It's what makes life worth living is to experience these emotions. And so if we can do that with the support of our partner, that makes life so much more fulfilling and easy. So thanks again for listening. If you want to contact me or follow me on social media, I am on TikTok and Instagram. I am at Coached by Kelby. You can also shoot me an email if you have a request for a topic, if you have a question that you want me to answer anonymously. I am coachedbykelby@gmail.com. You can reach me on social or email if you'd like to work with me. I work with individuals and couples through all of the topics that I've covered so far and more. I would love to pair up and work together with you. Please do leave me a review or a rating if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. And I will see you guys again next Friday.